Hi, I'm Gloria Donahue. Welcome back to Nana's Cookery. My grandchildren have gotten me involved in showing the world the things I've been making for years. I'm not sure whether they want to improve their skills or just want more desserts, but again, we're going to go with it. Today we're going to make lemon squares, and if you go on the internet, you'll see plenty of recipes for lemon squares, but I think mine is a little different, and I hope you'll consider it. Lemon squares are a very popular thing in my house. I first had them almost 40 years ago when I moved to this house and there was a newcomers group. And I had them and we enjoyed them. And some of those ladies are still some of my best friends. A few years later, I joined a Sweet Adeline chorus and entered that lemon squares in a fundraising cookbook and made them for years with that group. Most recently, I made them as part of a dessert buffet for both my 50th high school reunion and my 55th. So you can see I enjoy baking and I enjoy sharing. And food may be gone in 5 minutes, but the memory remains. My lemon squares are a little different in this regard. If you notice when you make lemon squares, if you have, that when you're done, there's kind of a little brown thing around the edge. And the reason for that is as the crust bakes, it comes out a little bit from the pan. And when you pour in the lemon filling then, and it bakes, it's kind of unsightly around the edges and I think kind of hard to get out. So only after about 30 years I came up with what I thought was a better idea. And that is taking the pan and making a foil insert. For this recipe, which is a two-part recipe, a cookie crust and a lemon filling, you're going to need for the first part, let me tell you, I'm only doing half a recipe in an 8-inch square pan. You could easily double it for a 9 by 13. You can do the same with any 8-inch or 9 by 13. In my opinion, you can half it or double it from the one size to the other. You're going to need 1 cup of flour, 1/4 cup of 10X or confectioner's sugar, and 1 stick of butter for the first part of this recipe. For the second part, you're going to need 2 eggs, a cup of sugar, almost 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, lemon rind if you've used a real lemon, 2 tablespoons of flour, 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. You're going to be baking all of this at 350. The first part for approximately 20 minutes, but since we've cut the recipe in half, we'll have to check on it sooner. And the same with the second half, which is 30 minutes. I'm reading the recipe from a card because honestly, the cookbook that it's in is so disreputable, I'm ashamed to show it on television. But let's start. This is a nice 8-inch square metal pan, very useful. If you're not using it for baking, you can also use it for casseroles. It holds 2 quarts, so it's a great choice for anything using 2 quarts. I'm going to take foil. If you have heavy duty foil, you could use that. I don't. I have just the regular foil. And I find that if you do it on the outside, it will fit in the inside easier than if you do it on the inside first. You'll see what I mean when I put it in. You don't get all those terrible creases in the corner. It just fits in much more neatly. The other thing I do different with my lemon squares is I don't use a mixer, I use a processor. Now, if you don't have a processor, it certainly can be done in the mixer. And in that case, start with soft butter. If you're using the processor, I take it right out of the refrigerator because I actually like to cut that butter in firm and then process it till it's a cookie dough. But you could make the exact recipe just using a mixer. Start by creaming your butter and then slowly do the other things. Again, another workhorse, the processor. I use it all the time. I'll tell you a story about that later. Well, I'll tell you while I'm getting my things in. I was doing a dessert party years and years ago in the 70s. And my husband came with a box and said, here's an Arbor Day present. It was a processor, which I'd only heard about, never actually seen. And I said, oh, okay. Oh, well, when I'm all done when we're done with the party, I'll pay attention to it. Well, I stopped at about midnight to have a cup of tea, and a piece of toast while I was doing things. And pretty soon I was chopping nuts. I was just doing everything with it that night. So it's been a wonderful thing for me. I certainly have enjoyed it. I put a cup of flour in the processor. Now I'm going to put a quarter of a cup of confectioner's sugar in the processor. Make sure when you close up your confectioner's sugar, you close it very tight because air will make it hard. That's also the same with brown sugar. They want to be closed really tight. Now I'm going to put the lid on, and the processor is either on or pulse. So I'm just going to pulse, and that's just to get the flour and the sugar together. Now I'm going to cut the butter into smaller pieces, and that's because it'll cut in easier. And I'm going to put it in, and then I'm going to give it a few pulses again. I don't want all the butter to stick to itself, then you've got big globs of butter. I just used regular salted butter. If you prefer sweet butter, you could do that and then just add a little salt. We're just going to put this in. Now we're going to let her rip. I push down every once in a while. As you see, sometimes some flour holds onto the top there. And now I'm just going to let her go on, and what's going to happen is it's cutting in all the butter, but now it's going to mix it all in, and you'll find it's going to make a dough. And that dough is going to come away from the knife. I take the knife out. Now I've got my dough. And it's going to come out really, and you can see it couldn't be quicker. And this is a sugar dough. This is like a shortbread dough. It's just butter, flour, and 10 eggs. When you're putting any base in a pan, try to put it in sort of blobs all over so you're not going to have to spread too much rather than put it all in and then try to spread it. So I'm just going to do it like this, and I'm just going to use my hands to press it in. I have always joked, there's something else that I make a lot called almond butter crunch, and I'm going to do that in another video. And I've always said, if I knew when I was going to die, I would make lemon squares and almond butter crunch, and there would be a great turnout at the funeral. Otherwise, I'm not sure. So we're just going to press. Remember, if you're baking with a new baker, and that's probably a child, a kid, do it, but just allow enough extra time. The tendency is when you're doing it to do it really quickly. New bakers need more time, and you need to give them more time. The experience will be good for you and good for them. If something takes you 20 minutes, just say, no, it's going to take me an hour today. But by the end of that hour, they will have learned a skill. And in the end, you'll benefit from it because I just heard from my niece, her daughter is making pie crust, making banoffee pie. She's become a baker, so that's a wonderful thing. We're going to take this very simple crust and we're going to put it in the oven, and we're going to bake it at 350 for 20 minutes. My other hobby, counted cross stitch.